This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, mystery, and sci-fi film called Open Your Eyes. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Cesar is awakened by a woman's voice telling him to open his eyes. He then drives into the quiet city but finds the streets empty. He stops and runs to the main road, but there's no one in sight. Cesar wakes up from the dream. While getting ready, he tells a woman in his bed, Nuria, not to leave him messages on his alarm clock. He drives away this time with the streets full of people and cars and picks up his best friend, Paleo. During a game of tennis, Paleo rants about how women don't give him a chance. Cesar assures his best friend that Paleo is just normal looking. Paleo argues that this still means that he's not handsome like Cesar, whom he wishes to get married so that he can have a chance with women. But Cesar believes that the right woman for him doesn't exist. In the future, a psychiatrist urges Cesar to talk about God. Cesar insists that he doesn't believe in God and there's no reason for what happened to him in his face. When Cesar's psychiatrist asks to show his face, he swats his hand away from his prosthetic mask. The guard threatens Cesar, but the psychiatrist, Antonio, asks the guard to leave. When the guard is gone, Antonio asks if Cesar thinks that he's a spoiled brat. Cesar defends that it wasn't his fault that his father owned a restaurant chain. His parents died in an accident 15 years ago, leaving him with a fortune. He adds that his business partners could get him the best lawyers, but they want Cesar to rot in jail to cut him off. Cesar assumes that Antonio is treating him because he wears the prosthetic mask, but Antonio corrects him that it's because he killed someone. Cesar doesn't recall the event. Cesar shares that he likes to sulk on the floor because it's the only thing that feels real to him. During Cesar's birthday party, Paleo attended with his date, Sofia. Cesar took their birthday present to his bedroom where he found Nuria on his bed, even though he didn't invite her. She offered herself as a present, however Cesar simply asked her to leave. Nuria figured that he was seeing someone else and deduced that it was Sofia. Nuria insisted that she didn't care as long as she could also have him. She tried to initiate a more intimate encounter with him, but he refused. Cesar returned to the party and asked Sofia to help him avoid Nuria. When Nuria walked in, Cesar hurried Sofia to another room. Meanwhile, Paleo drank alone until he found his date with his best friend. Cesar assured him that Sofia was just keeping Nuria away from him. After Sofia left the room, Paleo berated Cesar for choosing Sofia out of all the girls at the party. Paleo admitted that he likes Sofia, but in the end, he won't let her ruin his friendship with Cesar. Later, Cesar walked Sofia to her apartment. On her wall were photos of family and friends, and seeing her life, Cesar admits to Antonio that it was then that he fell in love with her. Sofia then drew a caricature of a smug Cesar while he drew a lovely portrait of her. He offered to sell the sketch in exchange for a kiss, but Sofia thought it was wrong for them to do anything because of Paleo. The next day, Cesar was about to leave when Sofia invited him to come closer so that she could whisper a secret. But instead, she kissed him. Cesar left the building smiling, but he spotted Nuria's car nearby. Nuria claimed that she didn't follow him, but then asked how his night was with Sofia. She figured that he didn't sleep with Sofia, but instead intended to date her first. She offered to let him have fun with her until it was time for him to be with Sofia again. When she challenged him that he was scared, Cesar got into her car to prove that he was not. During the drive, Nuria offered him some medication, which he declined. Nuria took all the pills instead, even though she was driving. She then shared that being with him was her happiness, and asked if he believed in God just before she sped up the car. Cesar's eye widened as Nuria drove the car against a railing, crashing them down a cliff and into a wall. In a park, Cesar happily met with Sofia. He told her about a nightmare where Nuria crashed the car to kill them both. After the incident, Cesar's face was disfigured. Then, Cesar woke up in his bedroom. The car crash did ruin Cesar's face beyond recognition while Nuria died. In the penitentiary, Antonio reminds him that doctors attempted to reconstruct his face, but they failed. During a meeting, the doctors highlighted the difficulty of repairing his facial structure. A doctor argued that his case wasn't that serious, but Cesar claimed that he wanted to end his life every time that he saw his face. Instead of another surgery, the doctors presented him with a prosthetic mask. In his cell, Antonio prepares to leave, but Cesar asks for a pad and pencil first. Antonio leaves the items before exiting. That evening, Cesar draws Sofia from when she went to the park to perform as a mime. At the time, Cesar watched her for a while until he finally approached her and gave her some change. It started to rain, yet despite this, Sofia held her position. However, after a few minutes of downpour, she decided to end her act. Sofia asked how he was, but Cesar pointed out that she never checked on him after the incident. Sofia claimed that she thought he'd be uncomfortable if she did, but Cesar argued that she was uncomfortable talking to him because of his disfigured face. To prove him wrong, Sofia touched his cheek, and he compared it to a dream he had of meeting her in the same park. At night, Cesar met with Sofia and Paleo in a bar. When they saw his prosthetic face, he explained that it was to prevent infections. With Sophia away, Pelayo revealed that Sophia invited him to the bar since she didn't want to face Cesar alone. He scolded Cesar for taking his grief out on Sophia. Insulted, Cesar removed his mask in order to drink from the bartender. The bartender wouldn't make eye contact with him, so Cesar demanded that he looked him in the face. Cesar then spent the night drinking with the bartender who befriended him. Soon, Cesar drunkenly enjoyed the liveliness of the bar, forgetting his condition for a moment. Eventually, he found his mask and wore it at the back of his head. After vomiting in the toilet, he imagined his regular face in the mirror. Later, Sophia kissed Pelayo on the cheek goodbye, and when she moved to kiss Cesar, he refused. After she left, Pelayo walked away, claiming that he parked his bike somewhere else. Cesar stopped him but was unable to say what he wanted. Cesar just reminded him that he's his best friend. After Pelayo was gone, Cesar decided to run after him. However, he failed to catch up. Tired and drunk, Cesar pictured himself with his handsome face chasing after Sophia and kissing her. After roaming the streets mournfully, Cesar fell asleep on the sidewalk. In the morning, he woke up and saw Nuria's face. He backed away only to find that it was Sophia. She then kissed him softly and confessed her love to him. In the penitentiary, Antonio looks through Cesar's sketches of Sophia. Cesar laments on being locked up for something he doesn't even remember. Antonio then asks Cesar if he knows someone named Eli since he repeated the name in his sleep the previous night. Cesar, however, doesn't remember. Antonio stresses that he can prove that he's innocent, but he needs to know the reason behind his actions and amnesia, so Cesar tells him about his dream. A secretary led him to an office that he doesn't recognize, where there was a photo of a man watching the sunset. There, he was shown the papers that he had signed. Antonio wonders if it's about the doctors that he met, but Cesar doesn't think so. One day, the surgical team offered Cesar a revolutionary operation to fully reconstruct his face. At first, Cesar figured that they were just tricking him out of his money, but they showed him advanced tech that looked like those in the movies. Cesar didn't know what they were doing, but he didn't care at that point. After his surgery, Sophia visited Cesar in his apartment, and when she removed his mask, she saw that Cesar's handsome looks had been recreated. The two then shared a passionate kiss that led to them spending time in bed. Cesar recounts how happy he was with Sophia, and Antonio asks what happened with Pelayo. In a restaurant, Pelayo snapped a photo of the happy couple, and when Sophia left, Cesar checked on how his best friend felt about their relationship. Pelayo claimed that he was okay since he was used to Cesar getting the girl. Pelayo assured him that there were no hard feelings between them. But one evening, while in bed with Sophia, Cesar woke up and went to the bathroom. He turned on the lights and saw his disfigured face. Cesar snapped out of the nightmare, then went to the bathroom again, relieved that his face was still the handsome one. When he returned to the bed, he caressed Sophia lovingly but was confused that her hair was shorter. When she turned over, Cesar found Nuria instead. He slapped her and demanded to know where Sophia was. Nuria shook in fear, stressing that she was Sophia. Angry, Cesar tied her to the bed and checked every room to look for Sophia. He asked how she survived the accident, but Nuria didn't remember the accident. At the police station, the detective questioned Cesar about the event. The detective recognized Nuria as Sophia, though Cesar insisted that she wasn't. When the detective asked more questions about Nuria, Cesar couldn't give any other information as he didn't know her that well. The detective revealed that they let Nuria go since all of her documents checked out. He insisted that the other Sophia was just a figment of Cesar's imagination. He then brought up Nuria's injuries, and Cesar got frustrated that she was playing the victim. While heading out, Pelayo scolded him about harming Sophia. Cesar insisted that it wasn't Sophia, but Pelayo argued that he had just spoken to her. To prove his point, Pelayo showed Cesar the photo that he took from the restaurant where Nuria was the one in Cesar's arms, not the Sophia he remembered. Driven out of his wits, Cesar figured that his business partners paid everyone to make him think that he was crazy, but Pelayo argued that he'd been confused since the accident. At the bar, a man walked up to Cesar. The man revealed that Cesar was dreaming, and the young man scoffed at this. The man diverted his attention to the bar patrons, suggesting that Cesar could make them do whatever he wanted. Frustrated, Cesar said that he just wanted everyone to be quiet, and to his surprise, everyone stopped talking. Cesar demanded the truth, and the man warned him that he wouldn't be able to handle it. In the penitentiary, Cesar tells Antonio that the man was a representative from the cryonisation documentary that he once watched. Antonio puts Cesar under hypnosis to trigger his memory further. Cesar finally remembers his dream. Eli was his secretary who directed him to the office where he met the man from the documentary. He presented Cesar with a contract that he signed. Cesar then remembers taking pills and overdosing. Later, Antonio interrogates Cesar about the drugs, but the young man claims that he didn't take any, insisting that it was a dream. Antonio then asks what he did to Sophia. One day, Cesar broke into Sophia's apartment. He checked her wall of photos and saw that all of them had been replaced with Nuria's face. He rummaged through her things and saw a sketch of her, but it was Nuria's face again. Cesar threw a fit until Nuria hit him on the head with a vase. She knelt before him, claiming that she thought that he was a burglar. Nuria left him to get a glass of water, but when she returned, Cesar saw her as Sophia again. The two made love, but Sophia suddenly turned into Nuria again. Cesar pinned her on the bed and buried her face under a pillow. He suffocated Nuria until she stopped moving. In disbelief over what he'd done, Cesar hurried out of the apartment. He passed by a mirror and saw his disfigured face again. Antonio explains how dreams can quickly shift his perception, changing faces and places without him noticing. Antonio shares it'll claim that Cesar has temporary derangement, which is the best chance of a lower sentence, even though he doesn't believe in this diagnosis. Later, Cesar sees the cryonisation documentary on the TV in the rec room. When a patient changes the channel, Cesar wrestles the remote from him. The guards pull Cesar away as he switches the channel back to the documentary, finally learning the man's name and company. Cesar tells Antonio that Eli is not a name, but the initials of the American company LE, which means life extension. On the company's website, they also find the picture of a man watching the sunset. Cesar insists that he's been to their office in Madrid and begs Antonio to help him get there. The next day, the police escort Cesar and Antonio to the LE office. Cesar sees the office hallways and the secretary exactly as he saw in his dream. However, Mr. Duvernois, the company's representative, isn't there. The secretary gives them pamphlets about their company while they wait. The two learn that cryonisation preserves human bodies to carry them into the future. Antonio finds it ridiculous, but Cesar argues that people used to think many things were ridiculous years ago. Later, Cesar is given the contract that he previously signed, where he agreed for the company to put him in cryonisation upon his death. His body will be frozen for years until it's time to resurrect him. Cesar notices a clause about artificial perception, an underdeveloped concept that will give their clients dreams. The dream is a virtual reality that will recreate the world as they knew it, and the client will forget that they've died already. Cesar questions if the dream could turn into a nightmare, but the man assures him that they're always working on perfecting the technology. When the man makes the same argument that Cesar made minutes ago, Cesar storms out. Cesar concludes that everything that he's been seeing is virtual reality. Antonio argues that it's impossible and tries to convince Cesar that he's not dreaming. Cesar refuses to believe him, claiming that the company mixed up Sophia and Nuria as well as his face. Antonio urges him to remove his mask, so Cesar finally does, and sees his disfigured face. Antonio argues that his face is normal, that he just convinced himself that he looks like a monster. Cesar rushes out, desperate to wake up. He hurries to the lobby when an officer tries to stop him. He knocks him down and steals his gun. And as he makes his way out, he accidentally shoots another officer. He continues to shoot the body, convincing himself that it's just a dream. Antonio rushes between Cesar and the police, who fire at him. When they get up, Antonio is unharmed and the entire area is now empty. Antonio is in disbelief, but Cesar sees this as proof that he's dreaming. Cesar spots someone on the roof, so they head there. On the roof, Duvernois tells him that he met Cesar 150 years ago. He confirms that everything is in Cesar's mind. Life Extension monitors Cesar's mind and dreams, but Antonio questions why they haven't removed him yet. Duvernois claims that Antonio is essential to the young man's mind. Frustrated, Antonio leaves. Cesar asks why they won't wake him up, and Duvernois tells him that he has to do it. He reveals that he's been dreaming since the night that he fell asleep on the sidewalk. It was where the company spliced his memory and connected it to virtual reality. Cesar never saw Sophia again, and the doctors fixed his face. After the evening at the sidewalk, he shut himself for months until he learned about the company. After signing the contract, he immediately overdosed himself. Duvernois explains that they only provide the setting and characters, but Cesar's mind fabricates what happens. When Cesar thinks of bringing Antonio back, he suddenly appears, ranting how everyone disappeared. Duvernois offers him a better dream, but Cesar wants to wake up instead. Antonio tries to convince him that Duvernois is lying, but Duvernois claims that Antonio is programmed to say such things. He then claims that the current year is 2145, and cosmetic surgeries have vastly improved. Cesar can live like a normal person in the future. To wake up, Cesar must jump off the building. Before he jumps, he finds Sophia on the rooftop. Suddenly, Cesar's normal face returns and Sophia hugs him. He also sees Paleo and struggles to leave the dream where they exist. Cesar kisses Sophia, then heads to the ledge. He pauses for a moment, still uncertain of his choice, and finally, he jumps. When he hits the floor, a woman's voice tells him to relax and open his eyes.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.